We are living literally in the ruin and wreckage of the former world that preceded us here. We're living on top of it. The gravels that we have used, the limestones that we've quarried, and the gravels we've used to cast the concrete that we've used to build our civilizations are literally the remnant of that former world. We have built our new civilization out of the wreckage of the former antediluvian world, and this is a simple scientific fact. How many people realize this and understand this? Almost no one. But it is a fact, and it's a demonstrable fact. And we could go on and on and on and on. But I think we've managed to get to the point. I think we'll end this session by introducing you to drumlins, because drumlins are a very important key, and I think drumlins are going to be the key to understanding where those sources of energy occurred on the ice sheet that we could then blame on the melting, the catastrophic melting. This is a drumlin. Blunt end faces up current, tapered end faces down current. Drumlin swarms. Giant current ripples. These are up on the Bruce Peninsula along the shore of Lake Huron. We see giant current ripples. Here's what happens. We see a drumlin swarm under where the ice was, showing that there were water. Now, how do we can demonstrate that it almost certainly that those drumlins were created by gigantic subglacial floods is because where that water emerges from the source, the edge of the glacier, we find giant current ripples. So this transition from water flowing under pressure to now water on a free surface. Is that making sense? I hope so. Gigantic ripple forms in western Nebraska. Here's a forest-covered drumlin in Saskatchewan, buried under thousands of feet of ice, but you had gigantic flows, in some cases flows that would have been several hundred miles wide of water subglacially. Now, so here's the problem. See, and this is why John Shaw's work was always rejected, because just like with J. Harlan Brett's, when he first proposed these gigantic floods, all of his critics said, well, you can't provide a source for these floods, therefore they didn't happen. And he said, well, I'm not sure where, he speculated. He said, I'm not sure where the source of the water was, but the floods happened. I mean, the evidence is conclusive. It's incontrovertible. These floods happened. Right now, eventually, when it was proposed that Lake Missoula was the source, it was almost like all of the geologists that were desperately trying to find some modern analog went, oh, okay. Well, it's just we know that we have ice-dammed lakes. We've seen them. They're in Iceland. We know in Alaska and British Columbia. We've seen them in Scandinavia, et cetera, et cetera. So all we have to do is just extrapolate upwards. No problem. End of controversy. The floods happened. It was just a big ice-dammed lake. End of controversy. That's pretty much where it stands today, right? The problem was, though, that there's so many inconsistencies within that. And now we come fast forward to the 80s and the 90s and the work of John Shaw, and he's proposing drumlins were formed by subglacial floods. And the critics all said, well, some of those floods you're proposing are huge, like the Livingstone Lake event that you've talked about, and you're saying 84,000 cubic kilometers of water total were involved in that? Get out of here. Can you provide a source for that? Well, I'm not sure. Could it be subglacial? Well, no. There's no way that you could form a water reservoir that big under the ice. What about on top of the ice? Supraglacial. Well, same way, because we know that every year glaciers will get meltwater on the surface because of the warm weather of the sun, and then eventually that water will drain through the glaciers down to the bottom, and it'll flow out, but it doesn't produce drumlins. So the critics said, if you can't provide a source for this water, those drumlins are not produced by subglacial floods. And he couldn't. He passed away before he could, but we had communicated with him just before this was about 2 years before COVID hit. We were going to go and visit a place up in Canada called Lake Nipigon. Look it up, Lake Nipigon. Look at the maps carefully. And he was going to go with us. And then 3 weeks before we were to depart, he passed away. So we did not do that trip. So that's still another upcoming trip in the future. But the critics said, there's no way you could produce a reservoir that will accumulate 84,000 cubic kilometers of water to create these vast drumlin swarms. Here's what I would tell you to do. Go to Google Maps and go to terrain view, right? Then, here's a good start. Go to and explore the area between the Finger Lakes of Western New York and Lake Ontario, and see what happens. Zoom in on that region when you're in terrain view, the 3D view, and see what you see. Now, they said to Shah, if you can't provide a source for the water that creates these subglacial floods, then it was not subglacial floods, so get out of here. And he couldn't. However, if we have a scenario, one of two. Now, my preferred scenario is multiple impacts into the ice sheet. We don't need a reservoir. We have instantaneous melting. We have instantaneous fracturing of the ice, which now allows easy access to the base of the ice by all of the superglacial melting that has occurred. We also have injection of water vapor on a large scale into the atmosphere that's going to require a rainout. And I think from having studied the erosional forms of where the ice sheet was, the drumlin fields, I think I can pinpoint at least 7 areas where there were actual impacts into the ice sheet. Now, using Robert's scenario, it would probably be solar plasma bolts or something that would produce the same thing. I'm going to come down on the side of impacts. I am not going to eliminate or reject out of hand Robert's ideas. I think we need to look at all of the evidence, but I think we can pinpoint. And I just gave you a hint. Look at Lake Nipigon. Also look at Lake Saint Jean in Quebec, and look at Great Bear Lake in Northwest Territories. So do some research on your own. I think you'll have fun with it.
Hello, I'm Randall Carlson. For thousands of years, ancient civilizations across the world, from Egypt to Mesoamerica, used a hidden science to build their greatest monuments. The science that connected their cities and temples to the very forces of the cosmos. This science is called sacred geometry. The pyramids of Egypt, the Mayan temples, and the sacred centers of Greece were all aligned with the stars. They understood that the earth itself holds energy, and by mapping this energy through geomantic surveys, they could build in harmony with the cosmos. These ancient structures weren't just for shelter. They were designed to reflect the patterns of the universe. Using tools like the gnomon pole, they aligned their buildings with celestial bodies like the sun, the moon, and certain stars. Sacred geometry gave their cities form and purpose, connecting the earth and the heavens. Imagine if this forgotten wisdom could be rediscovered. In my upcoming lessons, I'll reveal the hidden secrets of sacred geometry and how it can be used to help us shape a better future. This knowledge that has been lost for millennia until now. Join me live as we uncover the mysteries of the ancients together. Click now to reserve your spot and unlock the secrets of sacred geometry.
So, aerial view of Livingstone Lake Drumlin Field, and we'll end with this. Here you can see gigantic meltwater flows coming south. And this is Lake Winnipeg up here. There's Lake Superior. You can see very clearly the flow paths, can't you? Look at the size of those flow paths compared to Lake Superior. They're huge. These are gigantic meltwater flows coming off the Laurentide ice sheet. And then look up here. You can see the streaking, the flow here. You had water flows coming down this way. You had water flows coming this way. So do some research on your own. You can start with Google Earth, great tool. The National Map Viewer. It's put up by the U.S. Geological Survey, and it's based on LIDAR. You'll have fun with it, and you can contribute to this research, and you'll make discoveries. I think you've got a perspective. I hope I've warped your minds a little bit. And ultimately, of course, what I'm trying to do here is connect these kinds of events, the things that have done these kinds of things and left these kinds of impressions on our planet with what's going on out there, connecting earth and sky. And I think we could have a potential explanation why our ancestors were so obsessed with tracking the motions of the heavens, for multiple reasons, but that would be one of the most important. Okay, here's 2 quotes, and then we'll end with that. Sir James Hall, one of the founders of geology, back in 1815, in a paper titled On the Revolutions of the Earth's Surface, from the Transactions of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. The facts brought forward in the following paper, according to my view of the subject, clearly indicate the operation of immense torrents. And he's talking about over Europe, right? Now let's fast forward to 2 of the most prominent paleohydrologists in the field working today, one American, one Russian, Kloot, Baker, and Komotsu. So, wait a minute, there it is, yes. From 1999. Recently identified Pleistocene flood features in the Eurasian continent indicate that planetary-scale movement of water has been a major agent in shaping the landscape of our planet. Let that sink in. Planetary-scale movement of water. Now, when people like Flint Dibble and some of these archaeologists and stuff are dismissive of, oh, well, that was just a local flood. No, dude, you got no clue. You got no clue. So don't be so damn dismissive and arrogant because you don't know what's going on here. You have no idea why, because here's the thing. The kinds of things I have shown you here today and yesterday, if those kinds of events were to happen again, if we were to have a planetary scale movement of water, 10,000 or 15 or 20,000 years from now, what would archaeologists find to demonstrate that we were here? Not much. Not much.